So I knew it was going to be bad, but I think it's even worse than I thought it was going to be. And I'm talking here about the lies and the misinformation being spread about the Supreme Court's ruling on this birthright citizenship case and nationwide injunctions. Because really, they didn't rule on the issue of birthright citizenship at all. They ruled on nationwide injunctions and whether or not a district court judge can issue injunctions that apply outside their judicial district. Now, I've already recorded a video and posted it about this, and I explain it in some detail. But I've seen a lot of comments that I would like to address as sort of a follow-up to the comments I already made about this. But I'll tell you, guys, I don't know what the solution to this is, but you need to be very careful about your sources of news and information, especially when it comes to issues involving the law and the Constitution, because so many people really have no idea what they're talking about. And it's not just, you know, our pathetic mainstream legacy corporate media who are just awful for a whole lot of reasons, especially how they cover Donald Trump. But man, when you go on social media, and I'm including, you know, YouTube and podcasts and stuff, man, these people, so many of them have no idea what they're talking about. Even people who claim to be lawyers or may be lawyers. Just because someone's a lawyer doesn't mean they know everything about every legal issue. And so really, if you're not a constitutional lawyer, or you don't know a lot about the Constitution, you probably don't know what you're talking about either. You know, you might have taken Con Law 101, you know, or constitutional law as a first-year law student, and that was all you know about the Constitution. You know, so maybe you're a divorce lawyer or you practice commercial law or whatever. You know nothing effectively about the Constitution. So just, and I tell you to be careful, but unless you yourself are a legal or constitutional law expert, how do you know who's telling you the truth or not? I don't know. It's tough, but I'm going to do my best to tell you the truth about these issues, and you can choose to believe me or not. I mean, what can I do? But I'd like to address a few of the comments that I've been getting. So here's a comment in no particular order here. One person wrote to me, so federal judges can't block Trump's policies nationwide, only locally. That means even if a court finds a policy unconstitutional, it can still take effect everywhere else. Well, yeah, that's essentially correct. So what the court is saying, because what we're dealing with here again is an injunction issued by a district court judge. A district court judge has a small judicial district, right? And we're talking here about injunctions that these judges have issued that apply outside their districts, that apply nationwide. And essentially, they're usurping the authority of every other district judge in the country. They're basically saying, yeah, I get to decide this issue in your district, and your district, and your district. I mean, that doesn't make much sense, does it? But so, yeah, the court is saying that an injunction can't apply outside a judge's jurisdiction. Is that really so crazy? But that nothing about that means that lawsuits cannot be filed in other jurisdictions around the country and injunctions issued by other judges around the country. So yeah, you might have to go and file additional lawsuits in different courts, but it doesn't mean that you're prohibited from doing that. Also, you now have the possibility that I'm sure lawyers will explore on this issue, having to do with using class action lawsuits. I mean, that's a different way that gets around this opinion potentially to apply, to get rulings that do apply nationwide, or at least apply to everyone in the class if you go the class action route. But also keep in mind, we're talking about a temporary injunction. What this injunction is a lawsuit was filed challenging Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. And so the judge issued an injunction saying, okay, this can't go into effect. Trump's executive order cannot go into effect until we have decided this case, until the case is fully litigated in my courtroom and then potentially up on appeal. But it's only temporary while the case is playing out. It's not a permanent, we're not talking about a permanent injunction anyway. We're talking about a temporary procedural move to keep things status quo while a case is being decided. So keep that in mind. Also, I'm hearing a lot of people say that the court is just ignoring the Constitution now. Can you cite for me a section of the Constitution or anything in federal law that gives a district court judge the authority to issue rulings that apply outside their jurisdiction? And I know we've kind of become accustomed to that in recent years, that district court judges do it. And it's become a problem, which is one of the reasons the Supreme Court actually took up this issue, because it was getting out of control. But I'll save you, the research. There's nothing in the Constitution, and there's nothing in federal law that empowers a district court judge to issue nationwide injunctions. So when you're saying that the Supreme Court is ignoring the Constitution, what friggin' part of the Constitution do you think they're ignoring? Do you know that district courts are not even in the Constitution? Neither are circuit courts. The only court in the entire judicial system that is created by the Constitution is the Supreme Court. The district courts, as well as the circuit courts, are a creation of Congress. They're created by federal law. And Congress has a great deal of say about how the courts operate and these procedural rules. So, by the way, if you don't like this ruling, if you think that district judges should have authority to issue nationwide injunctions, and there's some good arguments in favor of district judges having that authority, then guess what? You can just pass a law. That's all. It doesn't even require a constitutional amendment, because the Constitution specifically empowers Congress to regulate the courts in this way and to write rules for the court, procedural rules and things. So if you think district court judges should have authority to issue nationwide injunctions, you can pass a law that essentially supersedes this Supreme Court decision. But the point is, to say that the court in this decision ignored the Constitution is false. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives district court judges this power. And again, if you think about it, a single district court judge issuing a nationwide injunction is essentially stepping on the toes of every other district judge in the country and saying, no, you don't get to decide this issue. I'm deciding it for your district. I'm sorry, guys, but that's kind of sketch. Anyway, oh, and by the way, as I said, this stemmed from the birthright citizenship case, but it had nothing to do with the issue of birthright citizenship, which the court will ultimately address one day, but it is still being litigated in the trial court. But even if eventually the courts, including the Supreme Court, rule in Trump's favor on this whole birthright citizenship issue and allow Donald Trump to get rid of birthright citizenship, that's another thing that can be restored simply by passing a law. Because even if the court upholds Trump's executive order, that is not saying, the court will not then be saying that birthright citizenship is unconstitutional. What they would be saying is that the Constitution does not compel birthright citizenship and does not automatically make you a citizen just because you were born here, if you have parents who were not legal citizens. That can be changed just by passing a law through Congress. You do not even need a constitutional amendment to change that and to reinstate birthright citizenship, because the Constitution gives Congress the authority to set rules for naturalization and citizenship and everything. And so if Democrats, if ultimately that the court rules in favor of Trump on the issue of birthright citizenship, which I don't think they actually are going to do, but they might. And if they do, if Democrats ever figure out a way to win elections again in the future, they can just reinstate birthright citizenship just by passing a law through Congress, because Congress gets to set the rules for citizenship. Okay, what else do I have here? Okay, someone wrote this, that this ruling chips away at one of the last real checks on presidential power. If one judge can't stop a nationwide abuse, then flawed or even unlawful policies can spread unchecked until it's too late. Well, I don't agree with that, because, again, this would only apply to one judicial district. So the judge who institutes an injunction, that injunction is still in full effect in that judicial district. What it would mean is you'd have to file more lawsuits and seek, more injunctions within that lawsuit in other judicial districts around the country. Now, might that be a pain in the ass? Yes. Or again, you can pursue, the possibility of class action lawsuits, as I say, and then you don't have to file multiple lawsuits in multiple jurisdictions. But here's the flip side of all of this. Everybody's acting as if this is the worst thing ever. But you know what it also does? By saying that a district judge cannot issue a nationwide injunction, it also limits the authority of a rogue, political hack district judge somewhere from blocking a legal order or a law passed by Congress by issuing a nationwide injunction, right? So it would prevent someone like Aileen Cannon, the corrupt hack in Florida, from blocking, we have a new president, and he or she issues a perfectly valid order. It prohibits Aileen Cannon from striking down that legal order nationwide. So, there's a flip side to this that's good. I'll give you another example that actually happened. And I mentioned this in the last video. But Republicans and conservative groups wanted to ban an abortion drug that was available. What was it called? Mifepristone or something? I always mispronounce it. Anyway, they wanted a nationwide injunction. So they judge shopped, and they found a judge, a corrupt partisan hack judge in Amarillo, Texas, who they knew he would rule in their favor, right? So they filed it in his court, and he ruled in their favor, and he issued a nationwide injunction blocking the sale of that abortion drug nationwide. Now, the same people who are today up in arms about this Supreme Court decision were up in arms, and now they all want a judge to be able to issue a nationwide injunction, right? That's what they're arguing today. Well, when that corrupt judge in Amarillo issued a nationwide injunction blocking the sale of that abortion drug, they were up in arms saying one judge shouldn't be allowed to issue a nationwide injunction. So which is it? And what, Republicans do the same exact thing when the shoe's on the other foot, right? They like it when they get their way. They don't like it when they don't get their way. Both sides friggin' do this. And I'm so fucking sick of it. No one actually deals with the issue. It's all through partisan lenses. Well, guess what? For those of you who didn't want the court in Amarillo, Texas to be able to issue a nationwide injunction on the sale of that abortion drug, they can't do that anymore under this ruling. So it cuts both ways for both sides. But again, you need to understand the issue. There's pros and cons, but the point is, this is really not an outrageous legal decision from the Supreme Court, because there's nothing in the Constitution or the law that gives a district judge the power to issue nationwide injunctions. Now, you may think that they should have that power. Like I said, well, then pass a law through Congress. But currently, that law doesn't exist. And there's no constitutional provision which gives a judge that right either. Okay, what else do I have here? This person wrote, the Supreme Court can't just declare a part of the Constitution void. Maybe you should learn what you're talking about. Okay, so this person says, I don't know what I'm talking about, and that the Supreme Court can't just declare a part of the Constitution void. Again, I would ask this person, what part of the Constitution do you think was just declared void? Do you think there's a provision in the Constitution that gives a district court judge the authority to issue a nationwide injunction? There's not. There's nothing in the Constitution that does that. So yeah, the Constitution, no part of the Constitution was declared void. Okay, and this person wrote, it is time to panic because every federal judge injunction blocking him right now is lifted, and there are a ton of them. That's not true at all. All of those injunctions are fully intact, but if they were nationwide injunctions, they only apply to that judicial district. So again, you may have to file additional lawsuits in different districts. You may need to think about, can we get this certified as a class action lawsuit, and then that way we can get a broader order. But then again, remember, people keep forgetting this too. This is temporary. It's a temporary injunction. This is not for all time. So these injunctions are not the be-all, end-all. It's not like these injunctions are permanent orders. They're temporary orders. The purpose of an injunction is to say, okay, let's just stop. Don't implement that right now. There's a lawsuit saying that what you're trying to do is illegal. So we're going to put that order on hold until we decide whether it's illegal or not. Once this is decided in the court, then the order, if the order is legal, if we determine the order is legal, then the order can go into effect. But we're just going to keep the status quo so that, things don't get all screwed up in the country. We're going to keep the status quo while this issue is being litigated. But the issue is only in that one district court. So the ruling of that district court judge would only apply to one district, right? You'd need to have this thing fucking appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court to get a nationwide order that applies everywhere. So for example, I'll give you an example of this. Remember before the Supreme Court ruled in Obergefell, that said there was a right to gay marriage. Until the Supreme Court ruled, we had a patchwork because we had different courts ruling different things, different states ruling different things, different federal courts ruling different things. So it was legal over here, it wasn't legal over there. And it wasn't until the whole thing got appealed up to the Supreme Court and we got a nationwide applicable decision from the Supreme Court. That's just what our legal system is. Now, you may not like that system, you may not like the way that is, and that's perfectly fine. But just because you don't like something doesn't mean, it's unconstitutional. Or just because you like something doesn't mean it's guaranteed by the Constitution. And, that is the sum total on these political shows and these political channels. That's the sum total, basically, of legal and constitutional analysis when it comes to these legal issues. If I like it, then it's guaranteed by the Constitution. And you can't tell me no. And if you tell me no, then that's a violation of the Constitution, even though they can't point to anything in the Constitution that says that. If they don't like it, then that's unconstitutional. I mean, that's what they all do. And it's so pathetic. And you know what the truth of the matter is? The Constitution doesn't say very much at all about a lot of stuff. Not every friggin' issue is addressed by the Constitution. That's not the purpose of the Constitution. All these issues were supposed to be decided by the people in a democracy. We're supposed to vote on a lot of these things, and they're supposed to be decided at the ballot box, and then the issue, laws passed by the people we elect to Congress. There's not an answer to all of this. Every single issue that comes up, there's not an answer in the Constitution. That's not the purpose of the Constitution. If every issue is decided by the Constitution, then why do we don't need a Congress, because every issue's already been decided. That's not the purpose of a Constitution. The Constitution sets up a governing framework, and it has certain rights recognized in the Constitution that are not supposed to be touched by the political process or by Congress or anything. But for the most part, it sets up a governing system. That's the purpose of the Constitution. Okay, do I have anything else here? Oh, and I have people all over my comments saying, well, that's not what Trump is saying about it. Trump's saying he won on birthright citizenship and all this. Who cares? Of course he is. That's what he does. He declares victory on everything. He lies about everything. Why the fuck are you listening to anything Donald Trump says? Let him say whatever the hell he's going to say. He's going to say what he's going to say. Just because he says it doesn't make it so. So of course he's going to lie about this Supreme Court decision. He doesn't understand it. You think he read it? Do you think he would understand what he reads even if he did read it? No, so who cares what he says? Ignore him. And finally, I'll say this. When these issues come up, legal and constitutional issues, and you're seeing the headlines that freak you out, the clickbaity titles of videos, the sky is falling commentary, you see all of that. And first of all, ask yourself, are you a legal or constitutional law expert? And most of you, if you're honest with yourself, the answer is going to be no. Because this is probably not what you've spent your life studying. That's not a knock on you, but unless that's the line of work you went into and that's the field of study you've been engaged in for decades, then you're not going to be an expert on that. Okay? It's not a knock on you. But so I would say recognize what you're an expert on and what you're not, because I see so many people like I am a constitutional law attorney, right? This has been my line of work my entire professional life, right? So, but I have these jackasses all over my comments talking to me like I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. And this rando Twitter person or YouTube person or whatever, they know, right? I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. First of all, recognize what you are expert on and what you're not, okay? So just know for yourself, you know what? Maybe I don't understand this issue very well. And maybe I shouldn't just believe whatever hysterical commentary I hear on MSNBC or on YouTube or whatever. Who's telling me this? What are their qualifications for telling me this? All right? As I said, just because someone's a lawyer doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. For example, I'm a lawyer. I don't know shit about copyright law, really. I mean, I know the basics. You know, I know I could talk generally about copyright law, for example. But if you have a copyright issue, don't hire me. I wouldn't take your case because I don't know enough about copyright law. I'm not an expert in it. I know generally, and I knew enough to pass the bar friggin' 25 years ago or whatever it was. But I don't know enough to represent you, right? And so unless someone really is a subject matter expert on something, just because they're a lawyer doesn't mean they know what the fuck they're talking about. And I see it all the time, right? I've been a prosecutor. My expertise is in criminal and constitutional law. That's my expertise. I hear people, like all during the Trump trials and everything, I heard people all over, they were on cable news and all over the place, talking about trials and criminal law and indictments and all this stuff. And it's clear they have no idea what they're talking about. I don't even know how they got these jobs. They knew somebody who worked at the network and, hey, well, I'm a lawyer, hire me. I don't know how these people even get in these positions. That's why I'm saying I don't know what to tell you, because it's so hard, unless you're an expert on this stuff yourself, it's so hard to know who's lying to you and who's not. Right? Like, I'm not an expert on physics. I love physics. I watch lots of physics videos and and cosmology, all this stuff. I read a lot of this stuff, but I'm no expert. So if two physicists were telling me two different things, I have no basis upon which to see who's telling me the truth and who's not. I don't know enough about physics, right? So I don't know who's telling me the truth. So I understand it's tough if you're not a legal or constitutional law expert and you got two lawyers telling you two different things. Who do you believe? You know how it usually works? People believe whoever it is that's telling them what they want to believe. And in this era of hysterics that we live in, and everybody who's, not on the MAGA right wants to believe that every single thing that this Supreme Court, because this Supreme Court in a lot of ways is god awful, right? It is politically corrupt. Some of these justices are like financially corrupt and in other ways corrupt. And certainly I'm very skeptical of them all the time. But there's this knee-jerk reaction that anything that they do has got to be, by definition, wrong, right? And so that's already what they're predisposed to believe. So when something like this happens today, we get this decision from the Supreme Court. If someone is telling you the sky is falling, they just ended birthright citizenship, they just ignored the Constitution, they did this, that, and the other, a lot of people's knee-jerk reaction is to believe all of that hysterical stuff. And then, to attack people like me who are saying, hey, wait, okay, that's not what it says. All right. And that's what happens. I had somebody comment to me today. They said, Mark, watch out. Blue MAGA is going to come out for you. And they're right. There's this same, I fucking hate blue MAGA just as much as I hate red MAGA. And that is, you're not allowed to say anything but what everybody else is saying. But that's what people want. They have their preconceived, this is what I want to hear. And there'll be lots of people who are going to tell you what you want to hear. And I bet on this issue, if you go on anti-Trump YouTube channels who are discussing this, I bet you 95% or more are saying the exact opposite of everything I told you here. They're saying the court just ended birthright citizenship. The court just shit on the Constitution. They just ignored the Constitution. This is dictatorship. This is tyranny. That's what they're all pushing, I bet, if I had to guess, because I haven't looked. And so I know I'm probably cutting against the grain. And people will see, and they will think I'm lying just by sheer volume. They'll say, well, everybody else is saying that this is, the worst decision ever. And here Romano is saying, hey, that's not what they said. Why should we believe Romano? Everybody else is saying the opposite. We're going to believe everybody else. That's the way it works. Even though most of those other people either don't know what the hell they're talking about themselves. Two, they're just repeating what everybody else is saying because a narrative forms, right? That's just the way this stuff happens. There's a narrative that forms on each side. And on this side, the anti-Trump side, the narrative is that this is a terrible decision. It shits on the Constitution. It ends birthright citizenship. They're giving Trump permission to do whatever he wants. Even though that's not true, that's the narrative. And so anybody who steps outside that narrative and tries to put on the brakes and say, hey, can we just talk about this rationally and deal with the facts? No, they don't want to hear that. So they attack you. I remember this happened to me big time early on in the Trump administration when I started saying, hey, this Merrick Garland is a piece of shit. He's not doing anything. He's not holding Trump accountable. He's going about this all wrong. He's not going to do anything. He needs to be fired. Back then, Blue MAGA attacked me. How dare you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Merrick Garland, because Merrick Garland is a Democrat. He was nominated for the Supreme Court by Barack Obama. He was nominated for Attorney General by Joe Biden. He's great. We need to support him. We need to defend him against any criticism. Even though everything I was saying was 100% accurate, I think everyone will agree now, right? But no, at the time, early on, when it might actually have made a difference if people were listening to me, they were all attacking me because I was going against the grain. That's what happens. That's the risk you run. Anyway, I don't mean for this to be about me. And this is way longer than I expected. So anyways, I'll cut it here. Thank you so much for watching. Please keep the questions going. By the way, come on my channel and just spread bullshit lies and misinformation, whether you are red MAGA or blue MAGA, and I'm probably just going to block you because you're not using my channel to push bullshit lies and propaganda. It's just not going to happen. And if that's what you're going to do on my channel, I don't really need you here anyway, so probably going to block you. But if you have any, if you disagree with me, that's fine. I'd love to hear disagreements about things. Respectful, intelligent disagreements. Pushing bullshit, lies, and propaganda, which you clearly have no idea what you're talking about, and you're just repeating something you heard some nutcase say on some other YouTube channel, well, then you're probably going to be blocked. But if you have questions, and here's another thing too. As I said, ask yourself, am I an expert on, and this could be whatever subject we're talking about, but here we're talking about the Constitution. Am I an expert on the Constitution? If not, maybe I shouldn't fly off the handle and make accusations and accuse people of not knowing what they're talking about. Maybe I should be asking questions. So if you come on my channel and you're not an expert in the Constitution and you hear something I'm saying and maybe it's different from what you're hearing other places, instead of telling me I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not saying what you want me to say, maybe ask a question. Really? So-and-so said this, or I heard this. Is this wrong? Or explain this to me. I thought it was this way. I'd be happy to answer those questions. If you have those questions, and other people probably have those questions, I'd be happy to come on here and do follow-up videos answering questions. I love that stuff. You know, I love questions, sincere, honestly held questions. Even if it's real basic stuff, you know, don't feel stupid. If you, like I said, you have that question, other people have that question too. I never begrudge questions. I like the questions. What I can't stand is when people who obviously have no fucking idea what they're talking about come onto my channel and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, or push misinformation as if they have a fucking clue. We have way too much of that. People need to take the time to learn. Okay, People need to be more interested in actually understanding things than winning stupid, pointless arguments on fucking social media. All right? Do we want to be right? Do we want to get stuff right? Or like really right? Do we really want to understand these issues, or do we not? If you're not one of those people, if you're just interested in pushing narratives and believing whatever the hysterical clickbaity titles of other videos are telling you, you go right ahead. This is not the channel for you. We do serious discussion here where we try to get at truth and to understand issues. I certainly have strong opinions about stuff. But let's base our strong opinions on actual facts and not hysterical nonsense that we heard on some fucking YouTube video from somebody who also didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Anyway, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you again soon.